Hello everyone. Happy Tuesday evening, and I'm going to give just a little spiel about my lunchbox challenge before going into added sugar. So we are on day 2 of our first ever Perkins Good Earth Farm lunchbox challenge. And what is a lunchbox challenge? Well, we're taking 12 days, September 9 through 20, to focus on packing better lunches. So lunches that are healthier, tastier, and just easier to pack, like better routines. So if you haven't joined the challenge, all you have to do to join is post a picture sometime during September 9 through 20 and post it on Facebook or Instagram, hashtag it PGEF Lunchbox, and you can do this up to once a day. If you do it once, your name goes into the hat to win one of our prizes. If you want your name in the hat more than once, you just post more often. The more often you post, the more often your name goes in the hat. If you want my daily emails for this challenge, go to Perkins Good Earth Farm /lunchbox, and there you can read a blog post going a little more in depth and also giving you a place to sign up. Okay, so for the most part, I have been trying to focus, and I want to continue to focus on the positive. What can we add to our lunches to make them better, as opposed to the negative? What do we take away? But tonight, I do need to address something that I know I eat way too much of and can end up just easily becoming part of my lunch unnecessarily, and that is added sugar. So, what is added sugar? Added sugar is, this is going to sound really obvious, but any sugar that's added to foods, as opposed to natural sugar, which we're not really talking about tonight. Natural sugar is the kind that's found in whole fruits and in some dairy. It is a naturally occurring sugar. Nobody is putting it inside that. So the added sugar can be anything from like high fructose corn syrup to maple syrup to organic cane sugar to honey to fruit juice and everything in between. All right, where do we find added sugar? Actually, before I answer that question, I need to give my disclaimer. So I am a farmer, probably more accurately the wife of the person who does the growing, the farmer's wife. I do more like the educating and talking about food and telling how great veggies are and all that good stuff. I am not a registered dietitian or a doctor. So if by cutting out added sugar from your diet, you are making a significant, major change to your diet, I do recommend talking to your doctor or a dietitian, because anytime we make a major shift, even if it's a good thing, if we've been in a bad habit for a long time, we can actually mess things up in our body if we don't make changes appropriately. So if you are someone who eats lots of sugar, and you'll know what I mean by that hopefully by the end of the video, I do not think it's a great idea to go cold turkey unless your dietitian or doctor is saying. There's my disclaimer. All right, moving along. Okay, so where do we find added sugar? It is pretty much in processed and packaged foods, and I'm going to go through some examples shortly. Also, it's not advertised on the packaging. It's not like, hey, we're full of added sugar. You have to go to the nutritional facts on the side, the nutrition facts, and this is probably showing up backwards, to find the added sugar, and we'll go into that in just a moment. So, the American Heart Association has created a very helpful infographic that shows the recommended daily limits for women, children, and men for how much sugar they should have. And notice I'm not saying their recommendation, like they're not saying like you should have this much added sugar every day. They're saying this is your limit. It's totally fine if you don't have any added sugar in your day. And why would the American Heart Association care about this? Well, because if you are consuming too much added sugar regularly, it can lead to things like heart disease, and they want to stop heart disease. It can lead to diabetes, so it can lead to a shortened lifespan, chronic illnesses, all that stuff that we don't want. So you can read more about that by going to their website, the American Heart Association's website, to find out more of those details and to get that really helpful infographic. So what are the daily limits? For women and children, they lump those together, I'm guessing because of weights and body types and stuff, but it is 6 teaspoons a day, which is around 24 grams. There are 4.2 grams of sugar in a teaspoon, but they just round it down to 4 to make it easier to do the calculations. So for women and children, the daily limit is 6 teaspoons, and for men, it's 9 teaspoons. Tonight, I'm going to focus mostly on children because we've been looking at packing our kids' lunches, and so I'm going to focus on the daily limit for kids, and I want to show you how much a typical American child might eat in a day without even batting an eye or thinking about it. I got this idea to do this day in the life of from a video that Ohio-based CSA Farms Shared Legacy Farms put out that I really liked and thought was helpful and wanted to share with you guys too. So I didn't come up with this on my own, but I do wanna share it with you guys. All right, now look at the time. It's about 8 o'clock Central Time. My kids are in bed. Notice I'm not doing this with all them sitting around. I bought these groceries, some of them, yesterday, including the orange juice. And when I got home, the orange juice was already broken into. And Dan was like, oh, I figured you bought that to celebrate Harper's first cross-country meet. So we are a family that celebrates with sugar. We love sugar. I'm not going to pretend we don't. Anybody who's brought me a dessert, which there are some pretty great people. Hey, Sarah, like you, who just started watching, who bring me desserts. I love sugar, okay? But we're going to have some reality checks tonight about that. Okay, back to our day in the life of a typical American child. So let's start with breakfast. All right. We're going to grab some Lucky Charms for breakfast this morning, okay? Now remember, to find out the added sugar, you go to the nutrition facts, you go down to where it says total carbohydrates, and you look where it says sugars. So in here, for one serving, 3/4 cup, it's 10 grams of sugar. Now usually if my kids eat cereal, they eat more than 3/4 cup. But for the sake of this illustration, we'll just assume they had one serving. So that means we're gonna put our sugar in this little bowl, our day in the life. So we're gonna do 2.5 teaspoons of sugar. That was just for breakfast, okay? Remember, 6 teaspoons is the recommended daily limit. Don't go above that. Now, if I added just plain white milk to my cereal, I wouldn't have to add anything else. Let's say I added that glass of orange juice. Now, what's really interesting about fruit juices is that it will say here, it will say includes 0 grams added sugars. So what they're saying is, well, sugar is a naturally occurring thing in fruit, right? So it's not an added sugar, and that is technically how they label it. But from what I understand, fruit juice, because the fiber has been taken away, has that same effect as the other added sugars when you eat it, what it does to your body. But you know what? It says no added sugars. We'll keep it out. If I did have it, it'd be 22 grams of sugar that we add to our bowl, okay? But we'll go on. So it's snack time. And we're on the go. We don't have time to do like some, cut up apple slices, let's move people. Or we're sending this to school in a hurry. And so I'm gonna grab my really healthy Cliff Bars, Cliff Bars, like what I used to eat when I was in college and hiking, and Dan would take climbing, and they had all this stuff in them so you could like last really long on the trail. Okay, so that's gotta be good for our kids too, right? Well, one of these kids' Cliff Bars has, let's look at our nutrition facts, 9 to 10 grams of sugar. So now we have another 2.5 teaspoons of sugar I'm going to put in my bowl. So we are at 5 teaspoons of sugar, and it's not even lunchtime. Okay, remember 6 is our limit. Okay, on to lunch. We live here where it's very convenient to just grab one of these Lunchables. You know, it's got chips and cheese and salsa, right? It's got a fruit punch drink, and it's got a little dessert. That can't be that bad. All right, well, 24 grams of sugar in there. So let's do the math. 24 divided by 4 is 6. So the Lunchable itself brings us to our daily limit. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we're at 11 teaspoons right now at lunchtime. Okay, now our kids come home from school and they're hungry, and I'm like, I'm gonna give you a good snack. I'm gonna give you this yogurt that you picked out from the store, and let my kids pick out their yogurt. This is so great. Now, remember, yogurt, because it has milk in it, does have some naturally occurring sugars. Now this, what I'm really liking about the nutrition facts is they're showing the total sugars and then added sugars. So this has 20 grams of added sugars, okay? If I gave this to my kids, I'd be adding 5 more teaspoons of added sugars. So I'm gonna add that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let's say I didn't let my kid pick out their yogurt, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna get you this healthier option. So this Yoplait strawberry yogurt made with real fruit. Well, the added sugars on here are still 13 grams. So even if I'd chosen this, I'm still getting over 4 teaspoons of added sugar in this yogurt. Okay, now for dinner. We're gonna have a good dinner. We're gonna have spaghetti and sauce. And you know, that is a great dinner, but you would not believe there are even 3 grams of added sugar in this sauce. You can get sauces that don't have added sugar, but like I said, they don't advertise that necessarily on the front of it. So another teaspoon of added sugar we're gonna add to our bowl here. And I meant to keep count, and I just lost count where we're at. I think I wrote it down though. We'll get to that. Okay, so I'm gonna say, hey, we just had a great dinner. There were no birthday treats at school. It's not a holiday. Kids want dessert, let's do dessert. All right, I got these heavenly cream-filled cupcakes. Yes, I did get the gluten-free ones because I do want to have one of these eventually, but let's stay on track, Julie. 17 grams of added sugar in one of these teeny little cupcakes. Okay, so that's 4 more teaspoons that I'm adding to my bowl. 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? This is how much sugar our typical child just ate in a day. And I totaled this up earlier. I think we were at 20 teaspoons, maybe even more. The recommended daily limit for children, let's get the visual. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, okay? So here's the absolute limit for a child, and here is what just happened. In a day that didn't involve a birthday, it didn't involve eating out, it didn't involve a holiday. So this added sugar is very hard to avoid, even in foods that we think of as just normal everyday foods. Okay, don't panic. What's good about realizing this is that we are realizing it, right? You have to acknowledge reality before you can change it. So what we can do is take some small steps. And again, if this is a really regular part of your life, it is overwhelming to say, I'm gonna change everything at once. Because we're doing a lunchbox challenge, I am recommending that you focus specifically on lunch and taking the step of removing just some added sugar from your lunch. So I'm gonna give you 6 tips for how to do this. You can apply these to any meal, but like I said, because we're doing a lunchbox challenge, let's just, as I go through these, think, how can I apply these to lunches specifically? All right, number one, don't send the sugary drinks or chocolate milk. So this drink has a bunch of added sugar. We don't need that. Kids can drink water or they can drink plain milk. As an adult, I often have just a cup of hot wild orange Tazo tea after lunch, and that is very comforting, and it also has a sweetness, so it satiates that for me. Number two tip, fresh fruits are a great way to meet a sweets craving. And the more that you eat fresh fruits when you have that, the more your taste buds and your kids' taste buds will change. So if you look at our lunchbox builder, my kids went totally nuts on mine, by the way. I think they chose like almost everything. But if you look at the lunchbox builder tool that you received when you signed up for my emails, there's so many fruits to choose from. We just have to make those available for ourselves and our kids. There's also dried fruits, there's frozen fruits. There are canned fruits. They don't have as much nutritional value. If they're canned in water or if they're canned in fruit juice, that's better than the high fructose corn syrup. Start where you can, but choose fruit for your sweet craving. All right, tip number three, get to know your food labels. So like I said, companies are not going to advertise on the front and say, this is full of added sugar. You have to be able to go to that total carbohydrate, go to your sugars, and read it. And like I said, on the dairy ones, I've noticed now they're adding the added sugars so that you can distinguish between what's from dairy and what's been added with the sugar. All right. Tip number 4, save your treats. For birthdays and holidays, you don't need to have a treat every single day. And like I said, this is like, I don't care for that news, but I know it's the truth. So one thing we've established in our house, this isn't a lunchbox thing, but in general, is on Friday nights, we do pizza and soda. And as I was researching for this, I was reminded that giving my child a root beer with 45 grams of sugar on a Friday night is really not a good idea. So what we've actually done starting last Friday is we are having them split one now. Just that, they're still pretty much at their daily limit. Another special thing we do on Fridays for their piano practice is they get candy because I'm using it as a bribe basically to have good attitudes on a Friday afternoon when they don't feel like practicing. But I was letting them choose 3 candies, and now I'm doing 1. So Friday afternoon is kind of our like deep dive into breaking the daily limit. But for the rest of the week, we try and keep it at that limit or below. And if it's a birthday or holiday, then we let them have a treat, of course. All right. Tip number 5 of 6, do this with someone. So if this seems really daunting, there are people who, even in this lunchbox challenge, who will do this with you. My sister and I, a few years ago, watched the documentary Sugar-Coated on Netflix, which goes much deeper into added sugar than what I'm doing. And after watching that, we were, appropriately horrified, and we decided to, together, cut back on our added sugars and meet the daily limit. So I think we spent a month doing that, and it was really hard. It was much harder than I thought it would be. We let ourselves have 1 treat a week because, like I said, we have a real sweet tooth, but we were able to bring it down and do it in a realistic way that actually made changes in our lives. So find someone to do this with you, and if your kid has a friend who's doing this too, have them do it together. So better as a team. All right, my final tip is this. Recognize that it is okay to use sugar as a comfort sometimes. Some people may disagree with me on this, but this past winter, this January, I listened to one of my favorite podcasts of all times, and it was Jen Hatmaker interviewing Hillary McBride. And Hillary McBride is a therapist, pretty well known, and in that podcast she talked about how of all the things when we need comfort, like turning to sugar over, drugs, alcohol, all kinds of other things is a better choice. So let yourself off the hook. If you are having a bad day and you need to go home and have a bowl of ice cream, it's okay. But then also acknowledge reality. If you're having bad day after bad day that requires ice cream and sugar as your medicine, you maybe want to look at a more healthy long-term solution to dealing with those emotions. Okay, I'm not a psychotherapist, so I'm stepping back from that. I will put a link to that podcast if anyone else. It was called Undoing Body Shame, and it was so good. So I guess my add-on to that is, please do not teach your children to crash diet. Don't teach them that sugar is bad. Too much sugar is bad, but sugar in itself isn't bad. So be very careful about how you talk to your kids about this. We've just shown our kids the infographic. We've shown them what can happen to their body, and we've explained basically what I'm explaining to you. So there's no shame or negative emotions attached to all this. Okay, so here's my challenge to you. Pick one sugar-laden food that is going into your child's lunch or into your lunch, and remove it and replace it with something else, like one of those fruits, just for the course of this challenge. That is only through next Friday. Give it that long and see if you can do it and make that change. Share your frustrations or your successes. Hashtag them, PGEF Lunchbox, or tag us, so that we can come alongside you and celebrate with you or commiserate with you, whatever it needs to be. So if you guys have any questions, you can post them in the comments, and I will do my best to answer them. Thank you for tuning in, and thanks for being part of this challenge. Have a great night. Bye.